Hey comrades, hope everyone's doing great. We're going to talk about Shining of the Holy Ark. In the Holy Ark? Something like that. Anyway, it's the next Shining game, number 7 in the chronological list of the 22 fucking games that I'm going to talk about and play through. Thank goodness they're not all the exact same kind of game, because that might get boring. To be honest, though, after playing all the tactics games, we got one more coming up. We got Shining Force 3, which is actually 3 games. But I have thoroughly enjoyed it. And I'm not going to lie, this game's still hitting like a 90%. Now, Shining Wisdom was okay. It was... I'm not a big fan of like the Zelda games generally. I like the Soulsborne one, the second one, Legend of Zelda or whatever, or Link's Awakening or whatever the fuck, whatever it's called. I'm not a Zelda guy, so go ahead and hate. Hate, down thumb down. Tell me I'm a piece of shit, all that good stuff. I literally do not give a fuck about Link. I do like that second one though, and it is like the prototype for a lot of these like 2D Soulsborne games people like to call them, which is I disagree with that terminology. But if you're playing shit like Ender Lilies, Salt and Sanctuary and stuff like that second Zelda game, that's literally what that fucking is. And I did enjoy that more though than a lot of these other ones. That first Zelda game, meh, and Link's Awakening, I had some fun with. I'm not gonna lie, but after that, like I like the Game Boy one too. That one was okay, but after that, it's just not my style of game whatsoever. Anyway, Shining of the Wisdom is that style of game, like Link's Awakening, but not nearly as good. And so, you know, it's a fine game. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the story. It was kind of silly and stupid. And I actually thought it wasn't bad. Kind of like the Magic Knight Ray Earth game, which was exactly the same. Which is like I played through it. I enjoyed the Magic Knight Ray Earth aspects, but as like a thing I would go back to and play, probably not ever again. I mean, I did it just to like play all the games together, but after beating it the first time when I was like a kid and had a Saturn, teenager, I don't know, it was a while ago. I was like, you know what, I'm good. don't need to play this game again. I got the gist of it. Shining of the Holy Ark, though, is excellent. It's a Western-style dungeon crawling RPG, as I like to classify them in my head. So I pretty much classify any of these games that are like the first-person dungeon crawl games as like more Western style, because they're really, really, really rooted in that like wizardry, might and magic, Bard's Tale kind of thing. While games that have the overview map, I guess, like a Dragon Quest or Final Fantasy, and any games kind of spawning off those, is more of like what I would typically consider like the genre of Japanese role-playing games. So if someone tells me they like wizardry, I could say, oh yeah, there's a couple Sega games that are pretty good, Shining in the Darkness, and this one, thus far, is pretty good. I'm enjoying it. Now, it starts off with like a completely ridiculous thing. So the intro cinematic begins, and there's these 3 assholes, and they're gathering light powers, and then they send them at this like giant airship, and they blow it up. And then there's like a little fighter airship thing that shoots off the side of it, and that's the intro. Then we get like a weird Matrix looking thing that's like, oh, you've never been here before. Let's start you a new game or start you a new story or some bullshit. And I was kind of sad because this is the first time that we don't get like a fun elf or like an old wizard or some old fairy bullshit to be like, hey friend, let's read a story, or like, let's talk about this. And you know what? I kind of missed it. I'm not going to lie. But it is what it is. So we're at some mine. And we got this first-person perspective, but it's very interesting because it's almost like it's like a 3D, but it's almost like a proto 3D. And when I say proto, I mean like, you know, like prehistory kind of thing, where it's like I could see what they're going for here, and like utilizing the technology from like the Saturn, and whenever this game was made, it's definitely rendering like a kind of 3D environment, and it flows very interesting. And then the characters are kind of that janky like PlayStation era, like if you see the old Final Fantasy VII, for example, kind of blocky, somewhat art style. Like it's a little bit reminiscent of Shining Wisdom, but in Shining Wisdom they're all like chibi characters, while they're like full standing characters. But we had these 3. I thought they were minors at first, but we had these 3 guys. They end up being guards, and they're talking about Rhodey and his big shield or something. They literally mention, oh, he's got a big fucking shield and stuff. Spoiler alert, Rhodey's a ninja and doesn't use a fucking shield, so I don't know what these guys are smoking, but whatever. And then they say, like Elzer or something, some asshole sorceress is sending like these mercenaries. They're sending Fort and Melody, and they're like, oh, Fort and Melody, yeah, she's a great shaman or healer. And then he's like a renowned wizard, and that's great. Ooh, that'll be so good. They're gonna kick his ass. That's great. And then someone's like, Relix, that's her name. And then someone's like, what about Sabato? I heard he hired like a paladin and Basso, the dragon warrior. And they're like, oh, that'd be good too. That's so good. Oh shit, yeah, they're gonna kick this guy's ass. And we get some hints that there's like some sort of like war or some sort of like rebel faction to like something that's going on. And but then they see Fort and Melody show up with Comrade. And they're like, oh, they brought a swordsman with them too. That's excellent. They're going to kick this guy's ass, which we do. Spoiler alert. But we roll up, and then we literally, it's like us on one side of like the entryway, and then there's like Fort and Melody on the other side. And Fort and Melody are like old school partners. And they say partners. I don't know if they're talking about like love interest, because like, I don't know. Sega didn't do a lot of the censorship stuff that Nintendo did, but there's still a lot of shitty translations of Sega games, so who knows. They might be lovers, they could be all sorts of things, but they say partners, so okay, partner it is. Fuck it, whatever. Anyway, so they're like not too happy. They're like, I don't know why they sent this motherfucker with us over here. Like, he didn't need to come. We got this handled, which they probably did. But he's here anyway, and they're like, cool. So you're gonna go in there, and then someone's like, hey, so the fuck you guys doing out here? Did you send people in? They're like, oh yeah, and then like, oh, you're fucking cowards and shit. And it's like, maybe. How many soldiers are in there? Like 10. Oh my goodness. Something. All right, well, let's go get Rhodey. And so we head to the mine, and instantly they're like, hey, you, new guy, you take the point, which is fine because that just means I'm in control, so cool. So we wander around this first area, and there's a bunch of guards just like fucking about, and they're like, oh no, you gotta go the other way. Oh no, don't go this way, go the other way. And it's like, all right, whatever, fuck you guys. And eventually we find our way to like a Coliseum area, and in there's Rhodey, and he's like, hold a second, you're not Sabato's men. And then we like banter back and forth. And Fort and him really, and Melody even, they all start talking shit to each other in some sort of like ridiculous dick measuring contest while Comrade just silently stares at the wall waiting for the battle to begin so he can kick ass. And he does. So once the battle starts, Rhodey goes down pretty quick. We like kick the shit out of him. He's very disappointed. But before anyone can do anything, that ship from the intro like crashes into the cave and knocks us and crashes to the ground and knocks everybody down, and everyone gets like crushed with rock, and everyone's like dying and stuff. And there's some like crazy, these 3 aliens like come out of it. And I say aliens, they look like fucking aliens. Like they have like, they're like each a different color. There's like a red one and 2 blue ones, which I guess is like the 2 men and a woman. And they like float around, and they like are saying archaic shit. Anyway. And then for it, like they're like these orbs are like floating around, and then we see this like scary looking spirit thingy, and then Fort gets up and like blasts it, and then the spirit like disappears and then possesses him, and he nopes the fuck out of there. He's like, oh well, I'm possessed now, I'm gonna get the fuck out of here, adios amigos. And then we enter this like crazy dream thing where we stumble around the maze, and then like we talk to Melody, and we talk to Fort, and we talk to Rhodey, and it's like super fucking creepy. And then there's like this big creepy angry looking guy, and he's talking about the threads of fate and resurrecting a 1,000-year-old kingdom and all this shit. And then we like enter like the Matrix. Like, I don't know what else to call it. Like it's like green lines with like, it's like a, God, I don't even know. But it's like a weird computerish looking realm thingy, and there's an alien guy there, and we find out that we're dying. We've been crushed by rocks, and that the only way to save us are from these like alien creatures, and that they were sent from the creator to fight for the forces of light against those of the forces of death. And then we like move our head over and we see Rhodey, and they're like, see this guy, for example, he's got brain damage, so he may never remember who he truly is ever again, or remember this or that, or what happened. It's because he has severe amnesia. But we can make him physically whole so that he can live. And then like one of the blue orbs like goes in him, and it's like, now he will live and he will recover, and maybe someday he'll possess his memories again. And then we like turn the other direction, and there's Melody, and she has a crushed rib cage, and she is also dying. And so we can possess her as well, and then she will recover, and then she'll be okay. And then like the red one goes in there, and it's like, you are also dying. So I will possess you, and like you and Melody will still have like free will, but Rhodey, we're essentially puppeting that guy around. since he has so much brain damage and amnesia and shit. And then we're going to use your bot. The three of you have to stay together. If you don't stay together, bad things will happen or something. And then you will fight the forces of evil. And ta-da-ta-da! All right, now we're all possessed, and we all have to stay together. So we, like, make amends, like Melody specifically, because Comrade B doesn't say shit, with, or Sea Bear here, as it is, with Rhodey, and like, I guess we're all together now. And he's like, do I know you? And she's like, shut the fuck up. And he's like, okay, sounds good. So then we work our way out, and we find a leprechaun. And so there's a whole pixie system in this game. Let's talk about it. So, bad guys can come from 5 directions. And I actually think this is fucking awesome. And so you can find these, like, pixies, and they're called pixies, but it's like leprechauns, succubi, incubi, fairy, and there's one more. It might actually just be pixie, but I don't think it is. I think it's something else. Sprite, maybe? Anyway, they're all considered pixies, and they're like these little guys, and they like hang out at the bottom of your screen. And the more so what happens is at the beginning of battle, you can have one of these equipped, and you have like a moment to like switch it out when battle begins. And if you choose the right pixie and hit the attack button before the battle begins, they will run out and attack, but they only attack from like a certain direction. So for example, if bad guys come from up, or they come from like down, so if they like come out of the ground, for example, like they dig their way out of the ground, which a lot of things do, and you have leprechaun equipped and you attack, the leprechauns will run out and do like one attack, and those attacks can be pretty beefy, right? Because it's like for every like creature you have, they do like 8 hit points, which may not seem like a lot, but pretty quickly these things are doing that. One attack does like more damage than any of my guys can do, so it's like an extra free attack on top of everything else, which is great. Now the downside is you have to like figure out where people are coming from, which is like if you're like really quick on the draw, you can do it every time, but I am not. And I noticed the pixie's getting experience points, which I don't know, it might do something at some point. But I just left it on leprechaun because I would say 40% of creatures come from the down. So with the 5 directions, 40% of them come from like one direction. So it's a pretty safe bet that if you just leave it on that, you're going to hit things most of the time. And as through like the first part of the game, that is 100% not changed. So we're just going to go ahead and stick with that. Okay. So once we find that leprechaun outside the mines. Now, one of the bullshit things about this game that I have to explain is that to find items and pixies and all this shit, you essentially have to just search complete randomly. Now, there are chests, and the chests do contain items, which some of them are useful equipment upgrades, but if you only get the chests in this game, you are missing out on like 75% of the items in dungeons. And it really comes down to just search everything, stupid. And so I was like, I'm not going to do that. So I looked up a couple guides, and I found some guides that gave you like loose ideas. It was like, oh, if you're in like the Desiree mines, these are the items you can find. And I'm like, well, that's not super helpful, but it's more helpful because at least I'm not just like searching for hours, praying to God that like I find everything. And then I found a better guide after that was like, it told you like, oh, you need to search a wall. And it purposely put things in like the order of which you could possibly find them. And I was like, okay, this is more helpful. And then at some point I was looking around and I found maps. So if you go to like, oh God, I don't even know where I found this. It's like shiningforcecentral.com. They have a lot of good resources there actually for these games. And I was using like one of the guides, and then I was like, I couldn't find one of these pixies. And so I was looking at some of these other guides, and one of them literally just has fucking maps. So it's a map of the dungeon and a red dot where you need to search. And sometimes you got to like search everywhere on that square, but you'll find what you're looking for if you like look hard enough. And I was like, all right, fuck these other guys. So if you're going to play this game, the only way to play this game and not lose your mind is to use the Shining Force Central guide. Or I think it's Shining Force Central, and then it's like the 3rd guide on the list for Shining of the Holy Ark. Okay. So that is the way to play this game. I wish I'd had that I didn't find this until like the 4th or 5th dungeon. So, but I found all the items and all the pixies, so it wasn't the worst case scenario. But one of these guys I was reading, this guy's like, yeah, I spent 55 hours on this game because I searched everything, every fucking wall, every side of like a tree in the woods, and I was like, hell no. Like, the fuck game? Like, at least give me like an item that will like resonate or make a sound when I'm near something. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? So that is the biggest negative. But if you have one of these maps with everything already mapped out, like, who cares? Like that gets rid of that like sadness completely, and then it's it's pretty good. It's a pretty good game. But that's some all bullshit. All right. So when we're in the town, we learn that the mountain's cursed or something. That there's like beyond the mines. So the mine's cursed or something, so people ain't going there. And then beyond the mines is the Godspeak Mountains, and that's where like the creator is or something, and that like the ancestors of like the people like came from there or something. Something. Anyway, when we're at the pub, we meet this wolf guy called Halfling, which is very confusing. But he wants to work with us to get through the forest, because apparently the gate that so what we find out is that Fort and the soldiers sent to the mine, they all came through here, and then they all left to the castle of Einrich, which is where we came from originally. That's where Izel and Sabato and all these other people are from. That's like where the king's at that was being rebelled against by Rhodey. So, but we can't get there now, so we have to just hang out and wait. And we talked to Halfling, and he's like, well, I know a secret way to get through like a forest so that you can get to the castle of Einrich, but I'm going to come to your room later and we'll talk about it. And we're like, okay, sounds good. We also meet Lisa and Basso, the paladin and the dragon knight that were sent. And as we're leaving the pub, they come out and they're like, hey, I know you. You're fucking Rhodey. We're here to kill you or capture you and take you back. And then we're about to fight, but then the city elder comes out and he's like, hold up. Wait a minute. Cut that shit out. I'm not having you fight here in the middle of like my small mountain town, you assholes. Take it out. Take it somewhere else. Besides, what are you fighting for? If you're trying to get this guy, there's only one way to get to Einrich Castle, and it's closed. So at least wait till that's done and then take it outside the village. And then Lisa and Boss are like, all right, we're keeping an eye on you. And I'm like, sure, whatever, fuck you. But it's also like just talking to random people. It seems like Lisa is a princess of some sort. Maybe the princess of the kingdom or whatever. But we also found out some other good information. The elder, if we go talk to him later, he mentions that there's 3 shrines, and that the way to open the way to like the Tower of Illusion is to solve the puzzles in each one of the shrines. And then we find a kid who's lost his dog. Oh, sad times. And he's like, hey, if you bring my dog back, that would just be great. And we're like, okay, yeah, man, we're gonna do it. So that evening, when we go to use the pub, we meet Halfling there, and he's like, hey, so you head through the forest, and then there's like a gravestone, and I'll meet you guys there, and when you get there, I'll join up with you, and then we'll be able to get to Einrich Castle, and everything's going to be great. And like, you can definitely do it because you guys are so powerful and stuff, which is super shady. But it's like, hey, what else are we going to do? We don't want to fight Lisa and Basso, so we're going to head through the forest. So we head through the forest, and at the end of the forest area, well, first of all, we find the dog, and we take it back to the boy, and we get a pixie. And then we get like a short explanation, like a tutorial explanation of like what pixies do. And I'm like, at this point I already have like 6 pixies. So it's like, all right, thanks for the late arrival, but whatever. And then at the end of the forest, we run into a wraith. We kill that. And once it's defeated, we look around for Halfling, and it's like, hey, where the fuck is this guy? But then he shows up, and it turns out that his name is Doyle, and that his name's not Halfling, which again was confusing because I'm like, are you calling this guy a Halfling? Because he's clearly like a wolf. He's not like any kind of fucking Halfling or Hobbit or anything like that. So it's probably maybe supposed to be like a half human, like a demi-human, right? Which is common with these Shining games, which, yeah, that would make more sense. Anyway, he's Rhodey's right-hand man, and he's very suspect of us being there and Rhodey not recognizing him and not doing anything else. But eventually we get him to calm the fuck down. And then he opens this passage to Einrich through like these the forest caverns or whatever, through this like crypt that we found. And then he slaps an iron mask on Rhodey and like locks it up, and he's like, there we go, that we don't have problems like you did with Lisa and Basso, that because no one's going to recognize you, so that should be good. And I have the key, so I'll follow you guys around and make sure everything's okay. And I'm like, how about you fucking join us, you asshole? And he's like, adios amigos. And I'm like, all right, fuck you. So we push through the cave, get some more pixies, find some more shit, and then we end up at the capital. And we get a lot more information at the capital. We get a lot of lore dump from the story and also just from randos around town. So as we run around town, we run into the red lady from the very beginning of the game, and she throws a bat at like a bat monster at this dog on the ground, because she's like a total fucking asshole. And then she teleports up to a roof and like blows us a kiss or something, and then she pieces out, and it's like, oh, okay. Several people throughout the town will talk about it. There's like a beautiful sorceress who showed up with the old sorceress, who's the one who hired us in the first place. We also learned the castle was built on some old ruins. And then we talked, there's like a whole there's like a historical center where they talk about immigrants and like the people here like immigrated here and that they were mixing with like the locals in this ruined area, and then like 1,000 years there's like a war 1,000 years ago, the 1,000 Years War or something, and also there was like a civil war. I don't know, I wasn't paying that much attention, to be completely honest. There's a lot of random bullshit was going on, but the most important thing is Vandal. So Vandal is like the key enemy of this game and like the Shining Force series, since we moved on from like the demons. And Vandal is like a super powerful guy who lived like 1,000 years ago, and he was like a total tyrant. And then God or the creator or something from the sky came down and helped defeat him and seal him up. And then everything's been good since then. We also learned that Sabato was kicked out of like being the Chamberlain for the king when Ilzer or whatever showed up, the sorceress. Rylix, that's what, I don't know why I keep saying Ilzer. And that people have like a real bad vibe about it. And that the pretty lady is with her. And then we learn about this mansion that clearly has vampires in it, because people like go there and disappear, and there's like blood references and stuff. There's a lot of good writing in this portion, because there's a lot of like hints about things with no one actually coming out and saying like exactly what's going on. But it's written well enough where you can kind of figure out like all the shady stuff without having it be like slapped in your face. And we're definitely gonna have to go to that manor at some point, so that's fun. So we head to the castle. All these guards are like, yo, the king definitely wants to see you. We finally meet Sabato. He sees the dark times ahead, and he's like, oh, the dark future. And like, I got replaced when Relic showed up, and there's something shady going on there. When we finally go see the king, he's standing around with Fort and Rylix, and they're like, oh, please come closer. Oh, come closer. You should definitely come closer. And I'm like, okay, we're definitely going to fall through a hole in the ground, which, spoiler alert, definitely happens. And it's just as ridiculous as you think it is. And so we get a little bit closer, and then the king, and we're getting like grilled about this and that, and about what's going on, and about like creatures and how we survived and all this stuff. And Brody finally like leaps forward and like starts using like ninja magic. And I say that because he's like moving his hands, and you see like Japanese figures show up, and then all of a sudden the dark spirits that are possessing Fort and the king like come out, and they're like above their heads, and they're like shaking, and the king and the Fort are shaking, and it's like, holy shit, like this is getting real serious. And then Rylix is like, oh, if you remove those dark spirits, they're gonna die, so just so you know. And then Brody like stops casting the spells, and then she's like, I knew it, you fucking coward. I'm gonna come torture you later and get more information out of you and where you come from and how you survived. But for now, and this is where we fall down the trap into the dungeons. A bunch of noobs, fucking noobs. And while we're down there, Melody gets sassy with Rhodey. She's like, aren't you a fucking ninja? Open this fucking gate so we can get out of here. And he's like, oh, I don't know, I can't remember shit. And no one mentions the ninja magic, but that's okay. Doyle shows up, and he's like, aha, so I believe you now. So he like unlocks the mask, because I recognize Rhodey even with the mask. And then, we talk more about the brain damage or whatever bullshit. And then Doyle tries to get Rhodey to go back to the Eastern Village again and like start the revolution again and all this stuff. And he's like, no, I have to stay with these guys. We have to like figure this stuff out and whatnot. And he's like, all right, well, I'm going to continue following you, not joining you, because I'm an asshole. And why can't you fucking just join us, you stupid asshole? Anyway. And then he's like, he unlocks the gate, and he's like, oh, hey, there's a well here. You go down the well. I'm going to leave a crystal key down there, and you can use that to get out of the well dungeon. Like a water well. And I'm like, why don't you just give me the crystal key right now instead of making me go get it? And then it's even more stupid, because he nopes out, and then there's literally only one way we can go, and that's directly to the well. And then as soon as we get down the well, the crystal key is just lying there on the floor. So it's like, what? Like, why? Why are you such an asshole, Doyle? Anyway, so once we kind of move through the well area, get another pixie or two, we find Sabato, and he's like, aha, I knew it. Me and a group of secret people have known there was dark times ahead and that these things were going to happen and they would be bad. So we set up like ways and means, and we're like, oh yeah, like what kinds of ways and means? And he's like, you, Melody, you were chosen, and Rhodey, you were the chosen one of fate. And we always knew there would be 2 boys and a girl, and that you guys would unseal the fates of eternity. Or it's like real stupid and like hard to understand. And it's like, I'm just like, all right, you crazy old man, that sounds good. But he's not an asshole for being like a crazy old man, because he like saves our game and will like cure us and all that other shit, which is kind of necessary, because once we get out into like the rest of the dungeon, we can literally just take like a very short path, and there's no battles. Like, we're like in the castle, then we're in the well, there's no battles. Then this guy was like, oh, I'm going to do you a favor and save the game for you. And I'm like, well, thank you very much. But then once we head into like the actual dungeon area, then it's like, it'd take like 3 minutes to get back to town. So it's kind of like, well, okay, well, it was a nice thought, but it was completely unnecessary for how difficult this game like pretends to be. Otherwise, it's like, you're like throwing me a lifeline here, but it's like, it was completely like, it did nothing. Like, was not like, oh, thank God there's a safe spot here. It's like, okay, I guess there's 2 safe spots right next to each other. That's cool, I guess. So he sends us, he's like, okay, cool, we'll get out of here and then head over to the Aberronyanje Manor or whatever, which is where the vampire guy's at, through the Aberronyanje Forest or something, I don't know. And that this guy, the king of the vampires or whatever, Galen, he's kind of an asshole too. There's a lot of, it's going around. It's fucking going around in this game. And that he will only allow us to enter his manor if we pass some sort of fucking test, because he doesn't care that much. Like, he wants to help, like, the resistance to, like, save the king and, like, save the world, but he doesn't, like, care that much because he's an immortal vampire, I guess. I don't know. Oh, goodness. So we need to find a key to his manor, and the key is somewhere down here. He doesn't say that, but it is. It's down here. So after we have our little combo with him that makes no sense and, like, doesn't explain much, we head down into the, like, the dungeon, the castle dungeon, dungeon. Dungeon. And it's tricksy. I like that, actually. It's got some puzzles. We haven't had, like, any puzzles thus far, so this one's got some puzzles. So we got to pick up these, like, crests or something, and then they're different shapes, and then we can slot them into different areas, and it changes the way the map is, and then we can use that to get, like, other crests, and then eventually we find, like, the gold key. And when we walk up to the gold key, there's a pile of bones on the ground, and I've learned my lesson from Shining in the Darkness that if you see a big pile of bones on the ground, you better, like, save up. So I auto-save that, or auto-save. I save state that, and then walk up, and then we get, like, a whole cutscene of, like, the skeleton forming, and I'm like, oh, this guy's gonna kick my ass, because I'm, like, low on mana and everything at this point. And no, he just, like, chit-chats. He's like, hey, what's up, homie? Good job. You passed my battle, or you passed my puzzles or something, and I'm proud of you, son. And, like, pats me on the back, and, you know, gives me a firm handshake. And he's like, the key's right behind me. You can pick it up and head to the manor. And I'm like, cool. And as I'm about to, like, walk past me with the key, he's like, hey, one more thing. And I'm like, oh, here's the battle. And then he's like, let me give you some hints about how to get through the manor. And I'm like, okay, shoot it out to me. And he's like, the moon rises over the bed of the dead, and the holy water cleanses all that lies before, like, the sundry library or some bullshit. And I'm like, oh, God, Lord Christ. Like, thank goodness I'm recording this. If I really need to, I can go back and, like, read this bullshit poetry again to figure out what's going on. God damn. Oh, goodness. And then he, like, goes through, there's, like, 4 or 5 things. And then, God. And then he's like, you got all that? And I was like, sure, whatever. Oh, goodness. And then, so I was like, okay, cool. And then he, like, falls back into a pile of bones. I pick up the key, and then I accidentally hit the button, like the C button again as I'm walking out, and I get the whole cutscene again. And he's like, oh, hey, didn't I just talk to you? I was like, yeah, bro, you did. And he's like, do you need me to repeat myself? And I was like, please don't. I'm good, fella. Thanks, though. He's like, all right, homie. Anyway, so that was all fun times. And so after that, we head up to town, we refresh, we upgrade the rest of our, like, stuff that needs to be upgraded, and then we head to the forest of Aberronyanje, and I'm just meandering around collecting items, and I, you know, through, like, a cemetery in the back of the forest, and then I end up in, like, this tomb, and I'm wandering around this tomb, and it's got these, like, sweet ass, like, secret walls, which are cool. Literally, like, you just press against the wall, and then, like, the wall moves all the way back, and there's some more good items. And eventually I get to, like, a point here where it's like, you get to a door, and it's some more cryptic bullshit that this game likes to throw at you all of a sudden. And it's like, oh, the door only open if, like, the clock turns on the clockwork night to, like, the strike of bullshit something. And I'm like, oh, Lord Christ. So then I re-wander around this whole dungeon, which is not very big, and just check everything, because there's these, like, random statues. They don't do anything. And then I'm like, I probably have to go to the manor first. There's, like, a whole area of the forest that I just, like, ignored, because I was like, ooh, cemetery. There's probably good shit over there. And since I'm using a map, I knew for a fact there was. And I'm like, all right, cool. So let's head back to the forest, see if we can find this manor. Hopefully that's actually there, and I'm not doing something totally crazy or whatnot. But, yeah. Out we go. Okay, so back through the forest, we eventually find the mansion, and there's the key. It's right at the beginning of the forest, essentially. So, whatever. The mansion's alright. It's pretty puzzly, which is fun, I guess. We're moving around. We find Basso. Hey, it's Basso. He's all knocked out, and he's confused how he even got there. And we're like, hey, bro, you okay? And he's like, well, Lisa and I followed you once you left the city through the forest and everything, and we got to the castle, and there was some shady shit going on, so we decided to split up and kind of figure out what was going on. Lisa headed to the castle, and I decided to come out here to check out the mansion. And then Melody's like, well, you couldn't get into the mansion. He's like, no shit, Sherlock. And she's like, then how did you get in here? And he's like, well, let me tell you a story. So through the cemetery, there's a dungeon. And I was like, correct, I have been there. And apparently he didn't need to, like, unlock the magic ray knight earth, the clock knight, the clockwork knight to get through, because he just, like, found himself face to face with Galm or whatever. And then he's like, he was a monster with red eyes, and he beat the shit out of me, and then I woke up and I was here, and now I'm scared, but I'm gonna be brave, I'm gonna be a man, based, and I'm gonna stand up, and I'm gonna face my fears, and I'm gonna go with you so we can find this guy together, and I don't have to be scared no mo. And I'm like, based. And so he joins up, we finish looting the place, and finishing, it's really like an adventure game kind of puzzle. It's like, oh, there's a bookcase with clearly an empty spot for a book. So then we got to find the book, and there's the book, but the book is like floating around in the sky. And it's like, all right, we got to find a way to take care of that. And then we got to go find a key to get through some of these locked doors. And once we do that, we eventually find ourselves at like a shrine of some sort, and there's holy water. So it's like, all right, cool. So let's take the holy water to the books that's floating, use that. Book drops, pick it up, take it to the bookshelf. Behind there, we find the clockwork gear thingy. We take that up to like the gear, the clock thingy, and turn that on, and then it releases the clockwork knight. Excellent. We didn't fight him. He was not that hard. I think he killed Rhodey or somebody during the battle, but with the four of us to get our powers combined, kick the shit out of him. He dropped some shitty sword that I already found a copy of in the same dungeon, so cool, I guess. And then we pull a lever, and I'm assuming that lever opens the door. So we head back out of the mansion, back out of through the forest, through the cemetery, back through the dungeon, and you bet it opened the door. There's some more secret passages and cool shit back here that we can find, but eventually we get to the part 2 of the mansion, and part 2 of the mansion is literally walk through a room, vampire attacks. Vampire's a bitch, so we kick his ass pretty hard. And then Galm shows up, and Galm likes to lore dump. He likes to lore dump a lot and talk archaically. Now, I don't know if this is like how it was in the Japanese version. I usually believe it's not. I believe like Americans or Westerners, when they like, especially back in this era, when they're like localizing shit, they like to add a lot of like anachronisms and like old-timey talk, and like they like to be a lot more mysterious. My experience with like Japanese Dragon Quest games is like you play them and you play the American versions. In American versions, everything's like very vague, and the Japanese version, it's like the yellow orb is in this named castle over there, and then you play the American version, and it's like, oh, the yellow orb may exist in the sky above the Lion Throne, and you're like, the fuck is that supposed to mean? And it doesn't mean shit, because at some point you like fight a lion in like a castle, and if you win that battle, you just automatically get the orb. But how am I supposed to fucking track that shit down in the first place? Like, am I just supposed to know that I'm fighting a lion in this place? Like, get the fuck out of here, game. So, it's kind of assholery. But it is what it is. Anyway, the information I was able to gather is he essentially reasserted that there's 3 shrines. We unlock those shrines, we get to the Vandal base. So, the Tower of Illusion that the elder from the mining town I mentioned is the Vandal headquarters or something. He also mentions that he's one of the most powerful Vandals, but he doesn't give no fucks about the other Vandals, which include Rizzle and whoever else, the pretty girl. And there was like a third one that I can't remember what they look like exactly at this point. But that Sabato awoken him to get access to some of his abilities to fight off the Vandals and to stop the reignation of the Thousand-Year Kingdom, which the book people told me about at the castle. And so he doesn't really care about that. He doesn't care about other Vandals. He doesn't care about the Kingdom of Enric. But Sabato did release him and give him his freedom, so he's going to help us out. He gives us a gravity stone, which will allow us to enter the Southern Shrine, which is where we have to go first, because now this sword gets named like 3 different things. So it gets named like the Ancient Blade, the Sacred Blade, or Sacred Sword. And then at some point, Basso, he's like, we got to go find the Holy Blade or something, whatever it's called. That's literally how it's translated. Like, the fuck game. And then he tells us, okay, so you got to start at the South Shrine, go to the South Shrine. So he pretty much instructs us on how to play the game. Go to the South Shrine, get the sword, take it back to the castle, kill Rizzle, or whatever her name is, and then you release your friends, and then you can go to the West Shrine and then the East Shrine. I think that was the order. because you have to go to each shrine in order. And once you do that, the Vandal base will open up, and then you can go fight them. And he also mentions that we're possessed by the Apostles of the Light, which is like the third name the aliens have been given to us. So I'm just gonna keep calling them aliens. And then he pieces out. And then Basso's like, oh, fuck, I fought a Vandal and I didn't die. That's excellent. But I'm really scared. I need to get stronger. All right, adios. And we're like, where are you going? And he's like, well, I'm sure Lisa's looking for me. It's been a while since I was back there, so I want to make sure she's not concerned. So I'm going to go check that out. And then Melody's like, all right, well, if you ever need help with anything, then look us up and we'll help each other out. And he's like, if, like big capital F, if I do, maybe I'll look you guys up. And then he's like, deuces. That motherfucker comes back in the very next dungeon. What an asshole. Lord. Anyway, so we go back to town, we heal up. There's not really any upgrades at this point, so we don't need to do that. And like I said before, as soon as we enter, so we head to the South Shrine, but to get to the South Shrine, we have to go south through the mountain range. We enter the mountain range. I got a little confused at first, because again, I'm using these maps that I found on the website thingy. And I finally figured out like which orientation I was like entering upon, because for some reason the maps don't tell you. So I gotta like look at my surroundings and try to look at this map and be like, where could I possibly be? But anyway, we find Basso immediately, and he's like, yo, I couldn't find Lisa, and then the castle was all locked up and no one had seen her leave the city. And I was like, oh damn, I need some help. I gotta get into this castle. And then I remember we were talking to Gollum, and he was like, oh, you gotta use the sword to kill Rizzle to get inside the castle to bullshit. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna head there. And so I head into this mountain range, and then I got lost. God damn it, Basso. And so I'm going to join you guys and keep going forth. And I'm like, cool, why'd you even leave in the first place? Whatever, fuck it. Just to make it slightly more difficult for me to like leave the mansion. It really wasn't that hard. By that point, I'm so over-leveled. But yeah, hilarious. So to the mountain, which will take us to the South Shrine. And in the mountain, we keep running into this big-ass fucking snake who keeps getting in the way. We have to keep circling around, because that snake is an asshole. He's a super asshole, and we'll get to that in a minute. But we have to keep circling around this dungeon, which I'm totally fine with, actually. I think it's a well-designed dungeon and a well-designed idea, because you take a dungeon that it could very quickly get from like the beginning to the end, and you kind of are forced to like work around like the multi-levels, and sometimes you go out on like the mountains and there's like ice on the ground, and there's like a puzzle aspect to that, and puzzle aspect to trying to figure out how to get to the heads of the snake. Because when you get to the heads of the snake, then you can fight. And I say heads because it's got 3 heads. So you fight it 3 times throughout this experience. And then when you fight it the 4th time, or when you fight it the 3rd time and kill it, then you automatically go into, because the snake's a giant asshole, apparently it's got another head. Maybe we're fighting the tail the whole time, or like this other head is like the tail. I don't know. It was kind of confusing. I like turn around and there it is. And you go right into that battle. And it's like, fuck you, snake. I hate that shit. Because you're like, I don't know. I should start seeing it coming, because it starts happening quite frequently in this fucking game. Anyway, after we kill him, there's this guy that's just like hanging out, and he's like, oh, thank you, cleared the mountain passage. Now we can go back and forth from Einrick to the Far East Village. Very helpful. Bye. And then he leaves, and I'm like, okay. And we bump into this guy a few more times. I don't know what his deal is, but he's just like around in taverns, and then he's like in dungeons sometimes doing goofy ass shit. So there he is. And he looks like Doyle, so he's another halfling, I guess. Anyway, so we find the Far East Village now. Here are the ninjas. We learned that the ninjas all came from the Far East, and that they came here, and then they met up with the knights who formed the country of Enric, and so these guys, the ninjas, set up the Far East Village, so they could all be like friends and have like stuff going on together. We also learned that there's like ninja magic, and then there's black magic, and that we have to use a combination of the ninja magic and the black magic to defeat the Rising of the Sentinels. This never comes up again. It's like, okay. And then we meet with the head, the elder of the village, and he pretty much just says exactly what Gallum already told us about defeating the evil, getting the thing, the spirits, yada, yada, yada. Good stuff. So off to the South Shrine with us. There is a lot of puzzles in this dungeon. which I also approve of. It's these dungeons are like very well designed. Thus far they all have like these kind of little like funky mechanics that make it so you actually it kind of forces you into exploration, which can be kind of annoying. But at the same time, it's like none of these dungeons are that big. So like moving back and forth through them, like at first it's very intimidating because it's a first person. So you're just trying to like remember, like you like turn left too many times and you're like, oh fuck, where am I? And sometimes it's happened like twice. You can get attacked from behind and that like. But usually it's like when I'm backing up out of like a thing, you'll like spin around and start fighting something. Anyway, so one of the mechanics here is that you can enter these like twirly things. And if you remember, we got like the gravity stone way back with Golem. I guess that's what allows us to do that, is we walk along these passages and they twist us so we're like on the roof. And we need that to get like certain items, including like certain key items. And there's like various ways to do it. And there's 3 floors, but there's 2 major floors. Oh, and also, we find like a pickaxe, and that pickaxe lets us bust through some of these walls, and then sometimes we like these magic walls, and when we bust through some of the magic walls, they turn into like these wall guys, and we have to fight them. So all good stuff. And then sometimes when we're in the upside down world, like areas will just be blocked off by rising platforms or whatever. So it took a while to kind of like figure out. In the first floor is pretty straightforward. There's like one access point to like the twirly thing, and then on the second floor, so it's like the first level does a really good job of like training you on like understanding what's happening, and then the second floor like really amps it up because there's 3 different areas you can twirly. And one of the twirly things, they if you go to it like the right way up instead of like the upside down way up, then you get like a ball that pushes you into a pit. So you got to like work your way around the dungeon and all that good stuff. So super fun. Once you finally like maneuver through all that bullshit. Oh, and also at one point the guy from the mountain like falls out of like one of the twirly things. And is like, whoa, that's crazy. There's nothing over there. And you're like, there's lots of stuff over there. That guy's a total dumbass and very unhelpful. Anyway, we finally get to like the final chamber where the sacred sword is just chilling. And then there's these 2 god statues, like these like Amun-Ra or Anubis or something. And then there's a bunch of gems. And then there's like a whole fuckload of placards because you're finally arrived to the math puzzle. So we learned that we have to, and I did this wrong. I thought I just had to put things in a certain order. And so I'm reading all this stuff. I'm like, all right, I'll put it in the order starting from lowest to highest. And I did that, and I got like kicked back out of that area. I didn't get kicked back out. It just like reset the puzzle, which is nice that you don't have to like leave the room or anything. It just does it for you. Because there's not really rooms. There's like you enter the dungeon, and then sometimes there's like separate areas, like floors, but usually it's like a big ass area. Anyway, so then I reread the initial plaque, which I misread the first time, and it was you have to balance out the gods. So you have to give each one of them the same amount of gemstone worth. And so thinking about the gemstone worth again, and this I guess this has been really annoying if you like miscalculate, because you're like if you miss like a count for the value of the stones, it can take forever to try to figure this out because you'll just be wrong, and then you have to go back and like rethink it. But luckily for me, I was able to kind of like put the gems in order and then do the math. And the math I literally just did in my head while I was staring at a blank screen. Not the blank screen, but like an unmoving screen. Like I didn't play around with it too much. I just like thought. I was like, all right, so there's like, I think there was 7 stones. So then you have to put like 7, 3, 1, and 2, or 7, 4, 1, 2 on one god. And then you put 3, 5, and 6 on the other god. And that both equals 14. Yeah. And then you get the Sacred Sword. Awesome. You can't equip the Sacred Sword right now because this game, like a lot of the other Shining games, not Shining Wisdom and not Shining in the Darkness, so it's been a minute, so it kind of threw me off. But you can promote. And I didn't realize that because I never go to the priest because I'm just save stating. But at some point, well, we'll get to that, and I'll explain how I figured this out. Anyway, so we head out and we talk to our boy, the elder. We're like, hey, look, we got the Sacred Sword. Let's see. Oh, yeah. And then he's like, awesome, let me call Doyle in here. And then Doyle is like, oh, I'm all injured and shit. And then Panzer shows up. Panzer's another one of these assholes from like the opening cinematic. And we learned that he used to be a ninja. He was raised in the village and all this stuff. But then at some point he turned to like the dark side and joined forces with the Vandals. Because of his bloodline or something. there's not a lot of explanation here. And later on, the Elder kind of expands upon it. He talks about how he was like an orphan and no one knew who his parents were. They raised him and he was always very aggressive and angry. And at some point, because him and Akane, so Akane shows up. She's the Elder's daughter. And Panzer and Akane clearly have some sort of like relationship, because she shows up and he's like, oh, I can't. And she's like, what are you going to do, fight me? And Panzer's like, no, I can't. And he like leaves. And then Akane's like, I'm going to come with you because I'm going to protect you from Panzer because he won't attack me. And then when we talk to the Elder again much later, he explains that, because of the relationship with Panzer and Akane, Panzer forced himself to leave, but then when he came back, he was all evil and shit, and it's a tragedy. And I think Akane is the Elder's daughter. Now, we talked about Rhodey's sister, and I think Akane's his sister as well. It was kind of confusing. Like, I feel like the translation, localization, something is just like I'm not getting the whole picture of like the relationships between all these people, because someone mentioned someone being like Rhodey's sister and that she was just like being sad and like looking off into the distance, and I thought it was Akane, but I don't know. I might have mentioned it earlier in this video and I sound like a real dumbass, but that's okay. Nothing unusual. All right, so now we have a fifth person. So now we can talk about this. So you have reserve members, and the nice thing about the reserve members in this game is you can slot them in at any point. And when I say any point, so the way this game plays in combat is like a Dragon Quest, right? So there's no fucking active time battle here. You make all your guys, and you can set them to auto, which I usually just leave them on auto because it makes it go faster. And occasionally I have to take them off auto because like Melody, for example, will just she'll like stop healing people and just keep casting like shitty attack spells, and so I gotta be like, all right, no, enough of that. I need you to do your fucking job. We're fighting a boss. Like the hell. Basso never needs to come off auto because all he can do is attack, so he can just berserk it up over there and be left alone. Rhodey's the same thing. Rhodey will like continuously try to cast sleep spells sometimes against like people who clearly are immune to sleep, and I have to take that off so he can cast like the fire spell that is like really, really good. Okay. Anyway, so at the beginning of every turn, you can move people in and out. So if someone dies, you can just slot the next guy in and keep going, which is super nice. Or if someone's getting kind of beat up, you can pull them out and slot in somebody else. And then when you get that situation kind of remedied for a moment, you can bring that person back and heal them real quick. So it's a great system, and it lets you utilize like all your characters. And everyone, it seems, gains experience at the same level no matter where they're at in your reserve or forward, which is great. It also seems like they gain experience even if they're dead at the same rate, because I've had people level up when they were dead. So maybe a little bit less, but that's still pretty fucking awesome. So then we head back through the mountain pass because we can't just fast travel through it. So we have to like roll that out. But like I said before, without the snake there, it's pretty straightforward. The other thing Akane mentions is that she set up a passageway, or she found a secret passage, or has a way to access like the castle's throne room without having to go through the castle, because the castle's all locked up and stuff, as we've previously discussed. And so that makes it pretty smooth to like, we head in, we save, we heal, and then we go to the well, we go to like a certain part of like the well dungeon, and once we're there, Akane like summons a magic boat. We take the boat, the boat just like takes us to like another part of the dungeon. We find some more hidden passageways, some more items and shit, and eventually find a magical circle that takes us up to the throne room. Well, Rilix is there, and the king and Fort are all laid down and passed out, and there's spirits above them, and she taunts us, and we like yell back, and it's like back and forth, and she's like, all right, fight them, spirits. And so then we fight these spirits, and we kick the shit out of it pretty much. One of my guys gets knocked to dead, but I'm like, oh, whatever, that's the boss, so who cares? Wrong. So Sabato shows up, and Rilix is like, oh good, Sabato, you're here to help. And he's like, no, I'm here to help them! Betrayal of the bad guys, so good. And he's like, use the sacred sword. So I use the sacred sword, and it severs the connection between the evil spirits and Fort and the king. And then Rilix is like, damn you, Sabato, you betrayer, I'll have to take care of this myself. And then Sabato's like, and she's like, you're gonna challenge me, Sabato? And he's like, nah, these motherfuckers got it, I'm gonna go take a nap. And then he pieces the fuck out, and then I don't got it, because Rilix shows up, and these evil spirits, they cast freeze 3, but once they cast freeze 3, they can't cast any more magic, which is kind of funny. But freeze 3 like fucks you up, and they cast freeze 3 like twice, and then Rilix cast like a spark, and I was dead. And I was like, good damn. Like, I was not prepared for that. So at this point, I'm like, do I need to grind levels to beat this or whatever? And I can't equip the sacred sword, which is strange because the guide or the map thing I'm using is like, make sure you equip the sword. And I'm like, I can't equip the fucking sword. And so then I'm like resurrecting Basso because he doesn't and Akane because they don't automatically resurrect. And then I noticed that there's like that slot for promotions, like all these Shining games have, and I'm like, oh goddamn. So then I'm able to promote the main character, so now we can equip the Shining sword. I'm like, all right, this should be much smoother, and it was. So next time I go back in, I just roll through the first guys, and then I'm very judicious about Akane and Melody coming in and out of the party to heal, and I'm using a lot more strategy, and I have everything on manual, so I kick the shit out of them, and then I kick the shit out of Rilix. There was like one hairy moment for a second there, but I'm able to beat her ass. Once she's down, she's like, oh fuck me, and then right before we're able to like finish her off, Panzer shows up, and he's like, let's get the fuck out of here. Well, first she tries to summon her sister, who's the pretty one, who used the bat monster attack on the dog. And it's like, oh no, then she takes off, and then Sabato shows up, and he's like, oh, the king and fort will be okay. I got you guys some room so you can rest. And then we get like a black screen with text, and it's like, oh, your powerful whatever went throughout the kingdom, and everyone realized how great you were, and that the king was well, and that the kingdom returned to its great honor, or some bullshit. And then there was like all the casks and like winery was released from the castle, and hooray, everyone celebrated. And it's like 2 days later, and it's like, man, we got so fucking party drunk. Like, I took 2 days to recover. Anyway, so we're back in the throne room, and let me check here. Heroic deeds. Okay, so then we learn a little bit more, which is about the Vandals and the Thousand Year Kingdom, which we've kind of like, it's been brought up several times, but essentially Rilix and her sister are Vandals, and they want to resurrect the Thousand Year Kingdom, and they're going to do that by doing something at the Godspeak Mountains, which is where Panzer and Rilix like escape to, which is through the mines at the very beginning of the game that we couldn't get to because there's a collapse, and we can't get through the collapse, but because we're not strong enough, because the spirits that are bound to us, they need to be like charged or something, and they were like sent. They're not aliens. They were sent from the Creator, which is still kind of aliens in my opinion, but they were sent from the Creator, and that we need to fully meld with them. And to do that, we have to go to like the Tower of Illusion. And the way to get there is to collect the 3 artifacts, and then it'll open a portal in like the basement of the castle, because it's like the old ruins of the Vandals or something. And then we can go to the Tower of Illusion, and then we can be ready to fight the Vandals and save the nation. And how does the king and Doofus Sabato know about this? Because there's a giant mural room in the basement of the castle that they keep referring. And I tried to go find it, but I couldn't. I found myself to like the cells again, and I found some items down there in like the prison cells, but I could not find this mural room that they were all hot and bothered about. But yeah, that's where they got their information from, and I guess that's why they reached out to, or they brought Gollum in. And anyway, they bring up the gender thing again with like the 2 blue gender male spirits and the female spirit, and how they are the ones who are going to be chosen like many years ago, according to this mural room, to like fight the evil and to stop the Thousand Year Kingdom from coming back and wreaking havoc or whatever. To be fair, I mean, I kicked the shit out of Rilix. I'm really not that impressed with these other 2 either. Panzer keeps noping out and is afraid of like a girl, right? And Akane is not a fighter. She's a healer. I didn't mention that before, but now I have 2 healers. She does okay damage. She does a little bit more than Melody. Melody does more healing, but it's not like fucking Sarah from Shining Force 2 or the other master monk who just who were doing more damage than like my damage dealers and healing. They were hands down the best characters in that game. So that was fun. Okay, so after we agree to head to the Western Shrine and then the Eastern Shrine, because we got to do them in order or whatever, and we need the Sacred Sword to get into the Western Shrine, which we do. When you get there, it's like at the very beginning, there's like a giant sword, and you use the Sacred Sword on that, and it opens it up. But before we do that, we're going to head back off to, we're going to try to upgrade, but the weapons here and items are so expensive that we're definitely have to do some grinding. I think that might be because this is like the final stop for like buying stuff, because there's only like 3 villages. There's that craftsman, and I have a lot of mithril lying around, so I'm sure I can craft some stuff when we get back to like the desert, the mine town, but I just don't have enough money for like anything, so not a big hurry. Oh, also, Fort finally joins us, and he doesn't want to. Like, the king and the Sabato talk for a while, then Fort's like, well, I don't agree with doing any of this stuff, but I kind of want to get revenge, and I sort of owe you for saving my life, so I guess I'll come along. And he is, thus far, the worst character in the game. Like, his magic is weak ass, and when I promote Hero-kun, he becomes like Hero-kun Master or whatever. When you promote Rhodey, he becomes like Master Ninja from Ninja. When you promote Melody, she goes from like Priest to like Summoner. And those summon spells are the best attack. Support has all this like shitty low grade like magical power, and maybe it gets better later on, but he's so far behind in levels. Like I'm getting all my guys are like level 20-ish at this point, which is what allows them to promote. Even some, like I think Hero was at like 25 because he's just leveling up faster than everyone else. And I use all my brave apples on him because I like to have my super character. Anyway, but then we have everybody, and then Fort's like level like 13. So he's like so much lower of a level than like everybody else. It's kind of embarrassing. While like Akane showed up and she was like a couple levels behind everybody else. Anyway, so then we go off to the Far East Village to talk to that elder again, and he's like, "Oh, good. I'm glad everything's working out and everything went well. So I'm gonna give permission to Doyle to join the Shining Force or whatever we're called." And but you gotta go find him. And they're like, "What do you mean you gotta find him?" Like, I don't know where he's at. He's out there somewhere. And like, punches you on the shoulder. It's like, good luck. He's a weirdo. And he is a weirdo, but I'm glad I went and tracked him down because he's very strong. He has this claw attack, and he might be doing, he does the second most amount of damage. Because Bassa, who probably should be doing more damage, I'm waiting because I know because I can look at this maps that I have. I know there's the heat axe, which is one of the greatest weapons in the Shining stories, in the next dungeon. So I'm not going to like spend like the 10,000 gold or whatever I need to get like his axe when I can spend it on like other people's weapons and armor and stuff. When I'm just going to find like a better axe in like a minute or two. Anyway, but finding Doyle is kind of annoying. Thank goodness I have this guy of guides because he is back in the mining town. So you got to like work your way, back and forth through the mountain twice, talk to the elder, work your way up there. And he's pretending to be a tree in traditional Shining fashion, like the ninja from the first game, who's just like in a bush. Anyway, and so you just got to remember what tree wasn't there the first time you were here. Like, I think I'm 20 hours into this game. But I know it's a tree, so I just search all the trees. So I have no fucking clue which tree's new. And eventually he pops up. He's like, "Wow, I'm surprised you found me." And I'm like, I'd be surprised if I found you too, because how the fuck am I supposed to figure this out without using a guide? I guess just search everything is the policy with this game. Anyway, so with that, we get Doyle, and now we have 7 members of our team. So now we have like almost a full crew of backups, which is great. And I think we still get Lisa at some point would be my assumption. We haven't seen higher hair from her. And Basso has brought up the fact that she's not in the castle, because once you're in the party and your little story beats over, it's like, shut the fuck up and sit down. Good stuff. Onward to the Western Shrine. The Western Shrine is, it's fun. There's lots of turtles, and we find turtle feed, and we feed the turtles, and then we ride the turtles. There's one section at the end where we're riding a turtle and we have to make choices, and that is less fun because it was kind of confusing to try to get to like where I actually needed to go. And it wasn't actually that confusing. I just didn't understand the puzzle at the end, because the puzzle was like, look somewhere and do something, and I was like trying to find out where that was, and it was literally just like right behind the sign. You're just supposed to like walk up to like the edge of the water, because it's like a water cave, and use an item. And then when it summons a bridge, we cross the bridge to get to the mirror, the holy mirror or whatever, which is a shield that the hero can use. And then we get attacked by what the game calls a giant snail, but is clearly some sort of like squid / octopus monster. Like, I didn't see no shell or nothing, and this thing's got lots of tentacles. So that's an awful battle, because and this is pretty much like what we're gonna be seeing going forth, is like, instead of just fighting like bosses or whatever, we're always fighting bosses with like sidekicks, and the sidekicks are like the worst part. So the way I start doing battles is I try to get my like mages in there and just have them like hit everybody continuously until they die, and then bring in like my heavy hitters. And speaking of heavy hitters, we get one right after this. So as soon as we beat the snail, we turn around, and guess who shows up? Golem! Hey, what's up, homie? And he's like, oh, hey, I brought something for you. And he like throws Lisa onto the ground. And it's like, I saved her from Alyssa, who's the pretty one, sister of Relix. And no thanks needed. I just felt like doing it. Okie dokie. So and then he's like, adios. Golp's helping out for someone who does not give a fuck about anything that's going on. But whatever. Anyway, so she's like, hey, sorry, I was, and she doesn't talk to Basso, right? Because it's another one of these situations where like once the character has like its introduction arc to get into the party, that is like the end of that. Except for Melody and Roddy, who or Rhodey, who are like more important because they're part of like the main character trio with the spirits and everything. Anyway, so Lisa's like, oh man, how'd I get here? I was like in the castle, and then like something happened, and then I had Gollum showed up, and like he like explained a bunch of stuff to me, and then we were here. And then she's like, oh, you were so strong. I'm so pleased that I can finally fight with you. If only you had been there when my kingdom had fallen. I wish we'd had individuals like you. We would have been saved and it would have been a fallen kingdom. And it's very sweet. And that's the last we hear about that for the rest of the game. So we take the sacred mirror and head out to the East Shrine. So the East Shrine is fun. It's like a sky tower because you can see like the outside from certain areas, and it's kind of a towery because there's like a top of the tower. It's like 6 floors, but some of the floors are pretty small, so it's really not that big of a deal. But the object here is to find these crystal items, like a crystal pot and a crystal gem and all this stuff, and then there's like murals on the wall. And the confusing thing is like there's like one of the murals, you talk to it and it's like something about statues, and there's also statues here, like some of those sentinel guys you fight, but some of them that aren't, you don't fight, they just stand there. And so I got the crystal stuff and I was trying to figure out where to put stuff and wandering around, and eventually I just had to fucking look at a guide, and it was like, oh, the murals, talking about the murals, and I was like, God, that's so obvious. Like, fucking mistranslation. I'm sure it didn't say statues in the original Japanese. Fuck you, Working Designs, whoever did this awful translation. So once I figured out it was the murals, then it was super easy because the mural, there's like a bunch of murals, and you just walk up to them, and it'll be like, oh, the eye is darkened or something, and so you give it the crystal ball, which is the eye, and then, oh, if I cannot attack, and I fight forever or some bullshit. And then so you give it like the shield, the crystal shield, right? And eventually, once you use all the crystal stuff and the murals, it like shakes the whole world. And then you go to like a fountain that was empty before, and now it's full of like magic water. And then you use the crystal pot, or it's more like what do you call it in English? It's like it's a pot, I don't know. You fill it with water and you take it to the top floor, and there's like a plant. Oh, there's also like plant ladders here, so you fight the plants and then they turn into ladders, and that helps you get up and navigate and stuff. It's cool. It's like a very cool mechanic. But you take the water to the top floor, and there's a plant, and then you use it on there, and then you fight the plant and seeds, which are like sproutlings, but whatever. Anyway, once you kill them, we get the crystal pendant. Now it's back to the king. He tells us that all the items will be taken down to the mural room, and that'll help us enter the Tower of Illusion, which has been talked about by a bunch of different dudes. So we do. And it's all deserty and shit. And there's a town there, and it's the Mirage Village. And then we go in there, and everyone's like, oh, hey, what's up? Time travels differently here. And like, we've technically been here for like 1,000 years, because during like the end of, or when the Vandals attacked, or like the end of the city back in the day, we came here instead, and we've all just lived here chilling out and having a good time. And then like several different people are like, wow, the items and weapons here are sure great quality, huh? You think just because we're sitting around for 1,000 years doesn't mean we'd perfect our craft, and perfect our craft we have, and perfect that craft they have. There are better items you can find in the dungeons, especially the last dungeon, the revisit to the mine, and even in the Tower of Illusion there's some better stuff. But if you're buying stuff, this is the way to go. And I was, half my items were like bought from these guys, and they're super fucking expensive, so it took me a while to like save up the money to get them, which is fine. And then there's a puzzle to get into the tower, and again, it's a puzzle that uses this whole, like, you hold the B button and you can move in certain directions, and it's very confusing. But essentially what you have to do is you read like the stone on the ground, and the stone on the ground says like, you must pass from the south, looking like with your right arm towards the tower, your left arm towards the tower, or both arms towards the tower. And so that just means, so the tower is like north, and so then you have to look like to the left, essentially. So if you're looking at the tower, you turn left, and so that means your right arm is to the tower, and then you have to cross over the stone from whatever direction it says, in the cardinal direction. If you're looking at the tower being north, then south is like you're on the village side, right? So that was very confusing. But we figured it out. And then I looked it up later, because I was like, that was very confusing. I don't know how people fucking figure that out. And it was like, oh yeah, if you play the original Japanese, it like just tells you like, face this direction and cross over this way. Essentially, like it's like 1,000. Say again, the English translators did a terrible job by just making it confusing for no fucking reason, and so they can go fuck themselves. But anyway, we go into the tower, and there's a lot of fun puzzle stuff here. It's a lot of like combinations thing. Like we twirl the world upside down, and we don't need that fucking item that we needed before that Gollum gave us for the southern shrine. We can just do it. And then there's like these like moving floor areas, but they're really just like they move one direction and they're one space. It's not like you get on them like a Shin Megami game and it like moves you everywhere like a Dragon Quest game. It's like you just have to find switches sometimes to like have them go different directions so that you can cross over to where you need to go. And then use the whole mechanic of like turn the world upside down. Like you got to collect like a couple different like mural pieces or like floor tile pieces and move them around. And bad guys here are pretty chill, so it was decent. I had to go through here a few times just because there's so many floors and they're so big, and it's just like I'd like push through, get to a spot that I was kind of confused with, be like, well, I'm out of healing magic, so I might as well nope out of here. So I do, and then come back and hit it again, and just, you know, because you're treasure hunting, so, and getting pixels. Finally, we get to, and every now and then we see this like aberration, and it like helps us go the right direction, which again is like there's only one direction for being all these dungeons in this game, for being like very twisty and turny and like you got to go back and forth and up and down to like unlock stuff. There is one pathway to go. There's not like it's not like an open world dungeon, if you will. It is like very much there is a path to go in this, and like you can deviate for like a tunnel or two that goes like not very far just to get like treasure, if there's treasure there. Sometimes there's just not treasure there. They're just like, oh fuck you, side paths. Anyway, so by the time we finally get to the top, by falling like upside down to the very bottom, which then we twisty turn so it's the top of the tower. It's pretty cool. Also, speaking of twisty turn, that guy who we ran into the dungeon, we ran into him in the mountain, and he said some shit. We ran him to a town, and he said some shit, and then we ran into him in like the South Shrine, and he was like, "Oh man, that's crazy. I'll catch you guys later." We never see him again after that point. Like, that is the end of his arc. So I don't know what the fuck he's doing or why he was even in here, but it was kind of funny. And then it was like, well, I guess he's not important. Because whatever. So we get to the top, and there's this guy floating on a staff wearing like, I almost want to say like Mesoamerican style like gear, like Peruvian, if anything, not Mesoamerican, I'm sorry. And he talks about how he can unlock the power for us to unlock the trueness of the spirits, but because we didn't like inherit the spirits in like the correct way, we're gonna still have to like level up to get our powers up, but that he can evolve the spirits so that they are like ready to use their mighty magic. And you know, then like the hero gets Inferno, which we have to use in the mines to get to Godspeak, and then Melody gets like a renew spell, which you would think was very useful, but was not very useful because you cast it on one person, and then you gotta like, and then it doesn't heal until their turn. So it's like, unless I'm just like jamming it at the beginning, but like honestly, like most of these battles, you gotta like be healing every round regardless. So it's not super useful. And then Rhodey got like a negate magic spell, which lets you negate all the buffs that the enemies put on themselves, which at first I was like, this is a shitty spell. But against like the last two bosses, he pretty much was in my party using that every turn. Because again, these bosses have like two cohort. They have two buddies, and in both the last bosses, the buddies would like they'd be like everybody would be spamming buffs. And so you just have Rhodey like negate, and it costs nothing. It costs like 5 mana points, if that, which is nothing compared to like the hundreds of mana points he has at the time. Anyway, so that was kind of funny. Anyway, so we find out that there's the Vandals, and then against the Vandals, who are like the dark spirits, there's the innovators, who are like the spirits of light, and that what happens is that like the innovators, the spirits are always like good because they're sent from like God or the creator, and that that God, that they turn people into innovators and they do great works and stuff, but that the pattern is that, and what happened last time with the end of the 1,000-year kingdom was that the innovators started getting mistreated, or like they were like, hey, we just expect you to do this and we're not going to say thank you because fuck you. And so the innovators like slowly got corrupted, and the spirits inside became corrupted, and that's how they became Vandals. So Vandals are they're also possessed of these spirits, but instead of being like on the good side, they're on like the bad side, I guess, according to this thing. And that's what destroyed civilization, was the Vandals at that time. So now we need to head to the Holy Ark, which is in the Godspeak, where we can like release the spirits or something, or fully merge with the spirits or whatever, or something like that. Anyway, off we go. We head back to the king, and the king and Sabato are like very confused, and you have three choice prompts for like text, and if you put the wrong one in it, nothing happens. So you got to like answer correctly, and answering correctly is difficult because the translation is shit. So, but essentially they're like, hey, the first question is like, hey, are you the people we just spoke to like 5 seconds ago? Because what we find out is that the whole time we're in the Tower of Illusion, which was quite some time, out here it was like 0 amount of time, because time travels differently. So we like walked out of the throne room and then walked back in a minute later, and the first question is like, are you the people we just talked to? And which is it's like fucking retarded kind of question to ask. Anyway, so you got to say no. I said no to that. I was like, nope. And they're like, oh, whatever, stop teasing us. And they're like, have you gone to the Tower of Illusion? And then I said, and then you got to be like, yes. But they don't ask that. It's like confusing. They ask something else, and then you got to say yes to that, I'm pretty sure. And they're like, oh my goodness, what happened? And then you like explain it to them, and they're like, oh, that makes sense. Okay. Anyway, so at that point, they're like, all right, well, you got to go to the Godspeak, and you got to use the Inferno spell to break the barrier that'll let you get to Godspeak from the Desiree Mines, and everything will be great. And they're like, high fives all around, let's do it. And so we head into the mines, and even into Godspeak. We find the rest of the pixies, and at that point we head to the Forest of Confusion because there's the pixie obelisk, and there we get the pixie bell, which when we use it does like double the damage my best attack does, because it summons all like 5 groups of pixies to attack. It is hella great. It's so hella great that I overused it and broke it before I got to the final bosses, which would have made those bosses 1,000 times easier because they do so much damage to everybody. But c'est la vie, that thing is fucking sweet. I wish I could like repair mid battle. I should have just saved it. I was literally just choosing it to be lazy, to like push through the Desert Mines and Godspeak to get to the final boss. Anyway, in Godspeak there's some sentinels we kill to get like the best shield in the game. And then we get to like the top, and there's like the Holy Ark, and it's like in space or some bullshit. And Rilix calls us out and then challenges us to a fight. And then Hot Chick shows up, and she's like, I'm just gonna watch. But she summons 2 vampires, which are just normal bad guys we fought here, to help her. And this is the part where it's like, oh, 2 vampires, fuck those guys. I've been killing vampires all day. The issue is there's 2 of them, and then there's Rilix, and Rilix has 2 attacks per turn. So it's technically we have 2 Rilix and 2 vampires. And so I'm trying to kill the vampires to get them out of the way, and they keep getting buffed, and then it's a negate. So that's like one thing. And then I have a healer just constantly healing me, which is Asuka. Not Asuka. Yeah, it is Asuka, isn't it? No, Akane. It's Akane. Then Akane is constantly healing. So I really just have like Melody casting Elemental and the hero casting Inferno to like power through hitting everybody. And so that takes a minute. Anyway, we're able to do it. Terrible battle though. Afterward, Panzer's standing on the side there trying to open the arc or whatever and kind of being an asshole. And then Golem shows up at some point as well. But after we defeat Rilix, Panzer states that he wants to open the arc but can't by himself. And then the hot girl is like, oh, sure, I'll help. And so he's able to like crack the arc, but then Golem shows up and distracts Elise, I think is her name, the hot girl, and is like, hey, you stop that. And then they chit-chat about Golem like not wanting to interfere, but clearly having interfered this whole time and helping but not helping. And then, you know, with loyalty to the Vandals and all this shit, and that he doesn't care about the 1,000-Year Kingdom or whatever. And anyway, while they're bickering, Panzer calls out to Golem, and he's like, hey man, why are you stopping me? You said you weren't going to do anything. And Panzer's like, and then Golem's like, yeah, all right, just do whatever you want. And so Panzer finishes doing whatever, and then he jumps into the arc and comes out as a monster. And then he's got 2 like monster sides, like the hands, which that's fair. Every one of these like Shining games virtually has had like the bad guy and then the 2 side bad guys. I think the only exceptions are Shining in the Darkness, which I think just had the boss battle at the end, if I remember correctly. And then Shining Wisdom, which also just had the boss. Anyway, he goes down easier than Rilix, shockingly. I think by that point I had like a rhythm with like negate, and then heal, and then Inferno and Elemental until it's down to the final, until I kill both the side projects. And once the side projects are down, I just bring in Basso and Dole, who just beat the shit because they do so much like physical damage, and I just have them like auto attack, and then Akane just keeps healing. So, and then the hero's attacking too. And at this point, the hero, when I boof him up, he's doing like 300 damage, which the Pixie Fairies are doing like 450, and then his regular attacks doing, and everyone else is doing like 100 and 200. So it's really just like the hero carrying the day. But after he's defeated, Elise and Golem, they speak some more, and then the 2 of the 3 spirits like leave, and they head to the Ark, and they're like, we'll see you later, we're gonna leave 1 spirit, but we're not gonna tell you whose body it's possessing. And it's like, okay. And then they're like, all right, you better get out of here, you scamps. It's going to cause like a nuclear explosion or something. Anyway, so we start to run out of there automatically. And then we see an airship flying over top in the sky. And it's like the airship from the beginning coming to pick up the Ark, I guess. That was knocked down when the asshole Vandals like knocked it down at the beginning. They're going to purify something or whatever. And then Golem and Elise speak some more about innovators and their enemies and the 1 spirit left behind. And then the Vandals leave. Okay, so we return to Enric or whatever, and we get a big reward. The reward is that they offer to make us like the Minister of Defense, and they throw a huge party, and everyone's having a good time. And during the party, main character like goes to talk to the king and tell him he's not interested. He's going to go and keep being a mercenary and living the high life with his like super overpowered shit that he has. And then we go back and we say bye to everybody. And Akane is really broken up because she clearly was Panzer's lover, or boyfriend, or husband, or whatever. They had like a very serious romantic relationship. So she's very sad. Everyone else is kind of just blasé. Lisa's like, oh, blah blah blah. Me and Boss are gonna go wander around. And then Fort's like, I'm done with this shit. I helped you out. I'm not gonna help you anymore. And Melody is just like, that was fun. So kind of lame. But Akane's story is really sad. And then Rhodey, too, has a good story. He's like, yeah, you and me are kind of the same. Like, we're just going to go and keep wandering and doing stuff. And I wonder which one of us has the spirit. I guess we'll find out someday. I'm pretty sure Rhodey's in the Shining Force 3 games, but I don't know about the rest of these jokers. Anyway. Okay, so then after we talk to everybody and kind of say our goodbyes, then we head out. And then the credits roll, and we just see the main character like wandering off on his own, and then we see like Lisa and Basso doing their thing, and we see Doyle and Akane at like a gravesite for I'm assuming Panzer, and then Rhodey's like doing the ninja thing where he's like standing on like a cliff with like the sunset and wind blowing through his hair or some old bullshit. And then we see Melody following Fort, because Melody is the apprentice of Fort, I think I finally figured out, even though she's like way more powerful than he is, especially at this point, because I leveled her up a lot more. Mostly because she was in the party the whole time. And then right at the end of the credits, we see all of them like meet up. Not everybody, it seems like, but like Lisa, Basso, Fort, Melody, and the hero like all meet up, and I don't know, maybe they're gonna travel together. And then the sun sets in the background, and that's the end. And that's Shining in the Holy Ark. Very good. I very much enjoyed it. It's a dungeon crawler with a lot of neat mechanics. Nothing really irked me. Some of the bosses like at the end got like significantly harder, but I mean you could always just grind it out. I mean I save state a little bit and just got like a nice rhythm going. But it was very fun. I enjoyed myself thoroughly. I would definitely recommend this to anyone who likes dungeon crawlers. Now if you're like a Shining Force fan, I don't know if this is really going to be up your alley. Like if specifically you just like the Shining Force games, I like these kind of Western style dungeon crawler games. So I always have a good time. And this, again, it's good. The characters are different. I love the fact that you can like bounce guys in and out during the battle. That is excellent. I just don't see the reason not to be able to do that. That's one of the best parts about like Final Fantasy X, for example, is that you can constantly be switching characters in and out instead of having to like, oh fuck, I have a party that I forgot to like heal up. I guess all my guys in the background are just dead too because fuck me, right? Because you have like a whole crew sometimes, and it's like it's nice when they can at least bounce in. Like Dragon Quest 4, I think, and maybe all of them after 4. Like they'd be in as long as you had the caravan where they were all traveling with you. So it actually made a lot of sense if they weren't like right there with you traveling. But this is nice because you're all everywhere you go, you're all together, and so you're all helping each other out. And so you can like bring someone in, cast a spell, bounce them out, and they all get experience points no matter what. It's very like enjoyable that you have all this access. It's not like I feel like sometimes like Final Fantasy is a big perpetrator of this, where you have like your 3 characters that are in and the 3 characters that are out or more are just like go fuck yourself. Maybe they get a little bit of experience, maybe. So it's like really annoying because if you're like, so you pretty much the game wants you to just choose 3 characters and like roll with it. Otherwise, it just becomes like exceedingly grindy, like a mobile phone game. But no, this was good. I don't think it connects that much to Shining Force 3, to be completely honest, from what I remember, because I've never played this before, but none of this information seemed like that relevant. Like the things, it's like introduces you to the Vandals and the Innovators and some of that stuff. Like I said, I feel like there's a ninja character named Rhodey in Shining Force 3. I don't remember off the top of my head, but the name sounds like vaguely familiar, but I don't know about the rest of these characters. But yeah, so highly recommended. Very good. And go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I will catch you guys later. Bye.